Mr. Harrington stood near the floor-to-ceiling window of his office, watching the city move beneath him like a well-oiled machine. Cars flowed in obedient lines, people rushed with purpose, and money, his money, worked tirelessly even while he stood still. He liked mornings like this. They reminded him that control was real, that power could be built and maintained if one stayed ruthless enough. On his desk lay a thin stack of resumes. He flipped through them with 2 fingers, barely reading names. Degrees, experience, recommendations, none of it impressed him anymore. People always needed work. That meant he never needed to care. A soft knock broke the silence. "Sir," the security guard said from the doorway, "the man you asked to see is here." Mr. Harrington sighed. "Send him in." The man entered without hesitation. He wasn't young, but not old either. His jacket had seen better days, the fabric slightly faded at the elbows. His shoes were clean but worn, polished carefully as if respect still mattered to him. What struck Mr. Harrington most were his eyes, steady, observant, and strangely calm for someone about to beg for a job. Mr. Harrington didn't offer a seat. "I'll be direct," he said, still looking at the city instead of the man. "You're unemployed. No current income. No influential references." He finally turned around. "I have a vacancy." The man nodded politely, listening. "Janitorial work," Mr. Harrington continued. "Night shift. Cleaning offices like this one. Low pay. No benefits for the first year. You'll be invisible, which is good. Less trouble." The man absorbed every word without flinching. "Take it," Mr. Harrington said, "or leave it. I don't negotiate." Silence filled the room. The hum of the air conditioner suddenly felt loud. Then the man spoke. "Thank you for the offer," he said evenly. "But I also have a vacancy." Mr. Harrington blinked. "What did you say?" "I have a vacancy," the man repeated. "Just like you." A slow, amused smile crept onto Mr. Harrington's face. "This should be interesting. A vacancy for what? Advice? Charity?" The man shook his head. "A vacancy to become." The smile disappeared. "To become what?" Mr. Harrington asked, his voice sharpening. "To become the man I choose to be," the stranger replied. "Not the man desperation forces me to accept." Mr. Harrington laughed, short and sharp. "You're in no position to choose. That's the reality you people never understand." The man didn't react to the insult. He clasped his hands calmly in front of him. "Reality is not only what we accept. It's also what we refuse." Mr. Harrington walked back to his desk and leaned against it. "Let me explain something to you," he said. "Dignity doesn't pay rent. Principles don't buy food. Pride doesn't keep the lights on." The man met his gaze. "Neither does losing yourself." That answer irritated him more than outright defiance would have. Mr. Harrington was used to anger, fear, gratitude, anything but quiet certainty. "So you'd rather stay unemployed?" he challenged. "I'd rather stay honest," the man said. "And available." "Available for what?" Mr. Harrington snapped. "For becoming better," the man replied. "For learning. For creating something that doesn't require me to erase who I am." Mr. Harrington scoffed. "You talk like a philosopher. This is business." The man smiled faintly. "Business is just philosophy with numbers." That landed harder than expected. Mr. Harrington straightened. "You know what happens to men like you," he said. "They end up broken, blaming the world. And men like you," the man asked gently, "did they ever stop running?" The question hung in the air, uninvited and uncomfortable. Mr. Harrington felt a flicker of irritation, and something else he didn't like to name. He had built everything by never letting questions slow him down. Yet here was a stranger with nothing, daring to question him. "You're wasting my time, Mr. Harrington said coldly. "Last chance. Take the job." The man took a slow breath, as if weighing something far heavier than employment. Then he shook his head. "I can't," he said. "Not because the work is beneath me, but because the price is." "And what price is that?" Mr. Harrington demanded. "Silence," the man replied. "Obedience without conscience." Mr. Harrington laughed again, but this time it lacked confidence. "You think cleaning floors is immoral?" "No," the man said. "I think doing anything while pretending not to see wrong is dangerous." Mr. Harrington felt a strange tightening in his chest. "You assume too much." Only what you've shown, the man answered calmly. The room felt smaller now. The city outside no longer impressed him. Get out, Mr. Harrington said abruptly. The man nodded, accepting the dismissal without resentment. He turned toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, he said, vacancies aren't just about jobs. Sometimes they're about courage. He opened the door and left. Mr. Harrington stood alone, staring at the empty space where the man had been. The offer still lay on the desk, unsigned. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar, a vacancy he hadn't known existed. Not for an employee, but for meaning. The office felt unusually quiet after the man left. Mr. Harrington remained standing long after the door had closed, his reflection faintly visible in the glass wall. The city outside continued its restless motion, but the familiar sense of control had slipped away. He returned to his desk and sat down, trying to shake off the encounter like dust from a sleeve. Yet the stranger's words replayed themselves with irritating clarity. A vacancy to become. He opened a file, then closed it without reading. Numbers blurred. For the first time in years, his mind refused to cooperate. That evening, long after most employees had gone home, Mr. Harrington pressed the intercom. Linda, he said to his assistant, I want everything on that man. Name, work history, reason for termination. Everything. There was a pause. Sir, do you mean the applicant from this morning? Yes, he replied sharply. Him. By the next afternoon, a thick folder lay on his desk. Thicker than most executive profiles. That alone unsettled him. He flipped it open. The man's name was Daniel Reed. The first few pages described an impressive career, top engineering graduate, multiple patents, rapid promotions. Daniel had once worked for a major infrastructure firm, one that Mr. Harrington knew well, too well. As Mr. Harrington read on, his jaw tightened. Daniel Reed had been the lead safety engineer on a high-profile project, one that had been completed under budget and ahead of schedule. A project Mr. Harrington had publicly praised, but the report told a different story. Daniel had flagged structural weaknesses. Minor on paper, critical in reality. He had refused to sign off on falsified safety documents. When pressure failed, threats followed. When threats failed, he was terminated for professional misconduct. Blacklisted. Mr. Harrington leaned back in his chair, a familiar heaviness settling in his chest. He had approved that project. He had celebrated its success. And he had never asked how the numbers looked so good. He turned another page. Daniel Reed had testified anonymously to a regulatory body. The case was quietly dismissed. No collapse had occurred, yet. But the risk remained, buried under layers of profit and silence. Mr. Harrington closed the folder slowly. For years, he had told himself that success required distance. You couldn't build an empire by caring too much. Someone else always handled the details. Someone else made the compromises. But now, that excuse felt thin. He stood and walked to the window again. Below, people hurried through crosswalks, trusting the buildings above them, never questioning who had chosen speed over safety. For the first time, Mr. Harrington wondered what kind of man he had become while refusing to ask. That night, he barely slept. By morning, he had made a decision he couldn't explain logically, but felt compelled to honor. Find him, he told Linda, and schedule a meeting. Today. Daniel arrived cautiously, his expression guarded but composed. He wore the same worn jacket, though it was neatly pressed. He looked around the office, not with awe, but with curiosity. This time, Mr. Harrington said, gesturing to a chair, please sit. Daniel hesitated, then complied. I read your file, Mr. Harrington began. Daniel nodded. Then you know why I said no. Yes, Mr. Harrington admitted. The word felt strange in his mouth. And I know why you were fired. A flicker of surprise crossed Daniel's face, quickly replaced by calm acceptance. Most people don't bother to look that far. I didn't used to, Mr. Harrington said honestly. That was my mistake. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't hostile this time. It was thoughtful. I don't have a job vacancy, Mr. Harrington continued slowly. Daniel's expression tightened slightly, as if he had expected that. But, Mr. Harrington added, I do have a different kind of vacancy. Daniel looked up. I'm listening. A partnership, Mr. Harrington said. Independent oversight. Full authority to stop projects you believe are unsafe. Direct access to me. Daniel studied him carefully. Why, Mr. Harrington exhaled. Because for years I filled vacancies with obedience. And now I realize what I left empty. Daniel leaned back, considering. Power doesn't change easily. No, Mr. Harrington agreed, but it can be shared. And watched. Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he said, this wouldn't erase what happened. I'm not asking it to, Mr. Harrington replied. I'm asking you to prevent it from happening again. Daniel looked around the office, then back at Mr. Harrington. And if I find something you don't want to hear, then I listen, Mr. Harrington said, or I admit I'm not ready to become better. The honesty surprised them both. Daniel smiled. Not with triumph, but with quiet relief. That's a rare vacancy, he said. Most men are too afraid to leave space for change. Mr. Harrington extended his hand. After a brief pause, Daniel shook it. That handshake didn't seal a deal. It opened a door. In the weeks that followed, changes rippled through the company. Projects slowed, audits deepened, profits dipped. Some executives complained. A few resigned. Mr. Harrington let them go. For the first time, he felt the weight of leadership instead of the thrill of dominance. It was heavier, but cleaner. One evening, as the building emptied, Mr. Harrington and Daniel stood by the same window where their first conversation had begun. You know, Mr. Harrington said, I thought vacancies were problems to be filled quickly. Daniel smiled. Some vacancies need time, otherwise you fill them with the wrong things. Mr. Harrington nodded, watching the city glow beneath them. Below, people moved through streets that were a little safer than before, without ever knowing why. And for the first time in his life, Mr. Harrington didn't need them to know. The vacancy he had finally filled wasn't on a payroll. It was in his conscience.